Hello, hello. Welcome back to Expansive Astrology, Sagittarius season. This is week 3, where we are getting courageous enough to embrace optimism, which is a courageous act, if you ask me. And I'm sure many of you agree. Like there's a lot of resistance to being optimistic. And Lindsay Mack taught me this. Like anytime our brain is really resistant to something, it usually means that we're like onto something. That we're on to something very expansive and soul-centered, right? And that's what Sagittarius is all about, ruled by Jupiter. Like this is the time to dream big, to embrace expansion, to embrace optimism. So let's just get started. Like let's talk about optimism. Optimism defined is the hopefulness and confidence about the future or successful outcome of something. Hopefulness and confidence about the future or the successful outcome of something. Hopefulness and confidence. It's also a philosophy. It's the philosophy that this world is the best of all possible worlds. Which I know, like I know how that sounds. Like this world, that sounds dire at times. That seems really dire at times, right? Like holy shit, this is the best of all possible worlds. This, fuck. But bear with me. Right? Sagittarius is Jupiter ruled, so let's take advantage and play around with optimism, with soul-centered living, and with dreaming really big. Hang in there. There's a scale. There's like a test you can take called the life orientation test. You can Google it and find a PDF of it. It says at the end of the like web page for the PDF, it says LOTR scale, and it's been open in my browser for like a few weeks now. And I always think Lord of the Rings scale. It's the life orientation test. It was developed in 1985, and it gives a score for both optimism and pessimism. And research shows that higher optimistic scores on this scale predict better outcomes in relationships, higher social status, and reduced loss of well-being following adversity, which is almost kind of like a double negative. Reduced loss of well-being following adversity. So heightened resilience, better ability to cope with hardship, right? Also, healthier lifestyle habits are seen with those with higher optimism scores, while health damaging behaviors are associated with pessimism. It's a big deal. So before we go any further, let me make this abundantly clear. Optimism is more than positivity. Like, I'm not here preaching toxic positivity. There's no toxic positivity happening here. It's not about keeping a positive mindset no matter what. It's not, optimism is not equivalent with happiness. We can both be optimistic and upset and unhappy. We can both be optimistic and heartbroken, right? Optimism is not positivity. It's not denial. It's not naivety. It's not being naive. It's not ignorance. It's not ignoring the reality of what is. It's not living with your head in the clouds or burying your head in the sand, right? If you know, like I'm absolutely not about that. I believe it's absolutely essential that we acknowledge what is and validate the reality that we're in, no matter what, especially when it's like fucking heavy and dark and hard. So again, optimism is not denial or being naive. Rather, I'm going to avoid saying being naive. Rather, optimism is the fundamental belief that things will one day get better. That when we find ourselves in darkness or feeling really dark, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. That it's the fundamental belief that we're always doing the best we can, and that like we're always being supported by the universe. So here's the great news. We get to choose how we operate. And we're pretty simple. Like we're very complicated and have a range of reactions and emotions, and we're beautiful in that way. And we're pretty simple. We're always either operating from love or fear. Right? Anger, worry, anxiety, jealousy, doubt, that's all rooted in fear. And those feelings are totally valid and necessary and deserve to be felt and acknowledged and worked through. And we get to choose to have a great day, even on those days. We get to choose to shift and operate from a place of acceptance or love or appreciation and gratitude instead. A place of empowerment and gratitude and peace, right? We so often place conditions on where we're operating from, and you get to choose. My inner state gets to be whatever I want it to be, no matter what is going on outside of me. That's such a beautiful truth. External sources do not determine my inner state. They don't have to. So, like, we get to choose to stop placing conditions on your happiness. You can choose to stop placing conditions on your happiness. And part of that comes with mindfulness. Like, all there is now. And we place conditions on our happiness, like I'll feel happy when blank occurs, whether it's some sort of achievement or some sort of change, internal or external, a relationship changes or shifts or shows up differently. Like we place once I have a better job or a bigger home or more money in the bank or lose 20 pounds, like we place all these conditions on our happiness, and it doesn't have to be that way. Like anxiety and depression are caused by living in the future or the past, right? By taking away focus from the here and now. In the here and now, you're alive. You're breathing, right? You're listening to my words here right now, meaning you have some sort of electronic device and an internet connection and some time to take to reflect. That tells me that relatively, like, you're doing well, you're doing all right, you're doing the best you can considering the circumstances, and you'll keep figuring it out as you go, the best you can in the moment. So when we're placing conditions on our happiness, and we're stuck in the past or worrying about the future, it's all an illusion anyway. The past and the future don't actually exist. Like, they're a figment of your imagination. What does exist is right here, right now, and right now, you're doing pretty great. Could things be better? Perhaps, probably, right? But you're here and you're breathing and you're surviving. So all things considered, like, you're doing pretty all right. Unless, like, you've been kidnapped and like this is the only thing that you get to watch is me for 96 hours on it. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Like, if you're listening to me right now, things are all right, right? So one thing I hear a lot as a resistance to optimism is like, well, life happens and bad people get good things, and something's like, I don't want to be let down. I don't want to be let down. So again, let me just gently remind you, optimism is not ignorance and gullibility. Yes, disappointments happen. Good things happen to bad people all the time, and vice versa. Optimism is not about denying those things. And I think we trick ourselves into believing that if we're optimistic, like, we're for sure just going to be let down in the end, or we trick ourselves into believing that we have to brace ourselves for the worst possible outcome, that we have to prepare ourselves for the other shoe to drop, right? I hear that all the time from clients. But know this, like, no amount of preparation and bracing for it can actually help you. Penny. It's fiction. It's all illusion. It's in your imagination. It's in your head. You don't know what's gonna happen. So like, what's the worst, or what's the use in worrying ahead of time? My best friend always says, or she tells me that worrying is suffering twice. It's in your head. We can cope with letdowns and disappointment and injustice if and when it happens. And you can have an overall optimistic outlook otherwise. Realism and optimism are not opposites. They exist together. This is not about being naive. Again, it's being hopeful and confident. So let me break down some tips to practice this, to practice optimism. Get in the habit of asking yourself and your family and your friends and everyone, like, what's a good thing that's happened recently? Like, what's good? What's been good? Practice finding the optimism in every day, and encourage others to do the same by asking them, like, what's been good lately? Everywhere you can, build your life around things that feel good, around things that spark joy, as Marie Kondo would say. And for the things that don't feel good and spark joy, like, see if you can adjust your mindset about that. See if you can, the things like the laundry and the taxes and going to the doctor and like the things that don't necessarily spark joy. See if you can find appreciation in those things. Be very intentional and careful with your language around things and your internal narrative around things. Note when you have a negative narrative and always be willing to acknowledge the fact that what you're thinking is an interpretation from your perspective, which is human and valid, but like totally subject to error, right? That really comforts me that, like, well, this is my interpretation of a thing, and I'm always open to hearing or acknowledging a different interpretation to things. I don't always know. I don't presume to always know, In terms of the language that you use, shifts instead of the things that you have to do, using language like I get to do my laundry, I get to go to the doctor, I get to file my taxes. Simple shifts like that can be really, really powerful. Choosing radical acceptance, choosing to accept, to be accepting of, to view everything as acceptable, no matter what. Now, and like, acceptance doesn't necessarily mean approval. Like, we don't necessarily have to approve of everything, of course. It's kind of ridiculous, but making a decision. Sorry, my dogs are like licking each other. It's very, very sweet, but they can stop. We can choose to view things as acceptable, as they are, rather than unacceptable. And there's so much that can be said around radical acceptance, and I'm not going to go too deep into that here, but I encourage you to dive into the world of radical acceptance and choosing to view the world as acceptable. It's such a powerful shift. And again, it doesn't mean approval. There's a big difference there. Be very aware of the times that we're really stuck in all or nothingness, all or nothing thinking. It's not all bad, just like it's also not all good, right? Always be willing to find the gray. And so, like, one rule I have is never chalking up a day as a bad day. Try really hard not to say it's been a bad day, right? Bad things happen, maybe. Things that I don't want to approve of or accept. It can be a really hard day, but I try never to chalk up a day as a bad day. And that kind of a shift can be really empowering over time and really powerful over time. Also, making rules like that helps us to be a little more descriptive, because what do we mean by a bad day? Why chalk up a day as a whole day? A whole day. We don't know how many days we get, right? Don't mind me being cheesy about it, but we don't know how many days we're going to get. So I would hate to call any of my days a bad day, right? Every day is just a day. And if it was a hard day, if it was a tiring day, if it was a trying, like pressing day, anxious day, like using different words than bad to help us be more descriptive. Along with embracing grayness in that way is really training yourself to look at the world through a both and perspective, right? Rather than either or. You can both be very upset about something and still have a good day. You can both be really weary about a situation and hopeful for the outcome. And again, this doesn't mean being naive. You can be weary and like very aware and alert and like prepared to deal if something goes wrong about a situation, and you can still be hopeful. You can still have optimism about it. This is not about denial. You can both be a realist and an optimist. It's true. The definition of realist is a person who accepts a situation as it is and is prepared to deal with it accordingly. People tend to talk about realism and optimism as though they're not the same thing, as though they can't exist together, as though you're either one or the other. And it's not true. Remember, the definition of optimist. I scrolled too far. The definition of optimism is hopefulness and confidence about the future or the successful outcome of something. The definition of realist is a person who accepts a situation as it is and is prepared to deal with it accordingly. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Being a realist does not mean you're not also an optimist. So stop fortune telling. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Stop thinking that you can know what's going to happen in the future. Stay very present, very mindful, right in this moment, right now. You're okay. Stop living in the past. Practice radical acceptance about what has occurred and decide to move on from there. The past does not necessarily predict the future. I think that's so important to remember, especially when like a brain likes to think things like every single July something terrible happens, and then undoubtedly like something comes up in July, and maybe that's true, but the past does not necessarily predict the future. This is all about how you look at things. I heard something recently that I thought was really cute. Every day is a holiday and every meal is a banquet. How fun to look at the world that way, right? We can find opportunities in everything that comes up. Everything can be framed as an opportunity. And I love that mindset shift. Every day is an opportunity for you to be better. Every argument with your partner, every time you feel bullied by your boss, every time your mom oversteps a boundary, every time you doubt yourself, it's all an opportunity for you to embrace power over yourself and your life. I love viewing everything as an opportunity. It's all an opportunity for me to shift into my most empowered, kick-ass, badass self, right? Especially when hardships come up. I get to deal with this. It's an opportunity. I love this tip. It feels a little awkward at first, but train your muscles to smile more. It'll feel weird, but smile for 60 seconds straight at least every day to practice. Smile while you do the laundry or while you do the dishes. Smile on purpose for no reason. There can always be a reason, but like practice smiling for no reason. I think that's so powerful. Smile from under your mask, even if nobody can see it. Do it for you, and they can tell. People can tell. Set very positive, optimistic intentions and like use them as affirmations, use them as mantras. I always love the idea of romanticizing the fuck out of life, really celebrating life, opening ourselves up to more pleasure and more beauty and more receiving. It's like celebrating every day, in a way, treating every day as though it's worthy of being celebrated. Every opportunity to take a bubble bath, like really embrace that opportunity. Every shower too. View every meal as though it's a banquet. Like really romanticize your life. How about every sip of water? Like romanticize every sip of water, because we are lucky to have access to fresh water. And it is so nourishing, and it's such a simple, beautiful way to romanticize your water. Have a whole lot of attitude, or have a whole lot of gratitude, because the things that we appreciate grow, right? Where we send intention grows. Where energy goes, I don't know what the phrase is. But what we appreciate appreciates. That's one of them. What is it? Where energy flows, where gratitude flows, energy goes. I don't know, but it's true. And then finally, I want to leave you with this dialectical behavioral therapy skill called acting as if. Acting as if is almost like a mind hack. It's very much fake it till you make it. And it works. This is an evidence-based way of approaching life in a new way, so that your external landscape can begin to shift, and thus your internal landscape will shift over time as well. You'll start to believe yourself more wholly, and your confidence will begin to increase. So often we sabotage ourselves. Self-sabotage is anytime we act in a way that is unhelpful or ineffective, even despite knowing that there's a better way to do things. And we do this because of negative automatic thoughts or beliefs. Things like, it doesn't matter how hard I try, or this always happens to me, or I cannot do this, right? Those sorts of thoughts and beliefs really get in the way of our actual abilities to do things and to do it well. So acting as if helps us shift out of those dysfunctional thoughts. So here's how it works. First, practice identifying the automatic thoughts or the beliefs that are getting in the way. For instance, like, let's say you're about to go out on a first date, and you might have the thought, like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Dating sucks. This person could never actually like me. Like, this is never gonna work. Every first date I've been on in the past 8 months was blown. This line of thinking increases our anxiety. It decreases our ability to have a good time, and it might hinder us from like relaxing into the situation and being our bright, shiny, lovely selves. Because if I know that the date is going to fail no matter what, and that's what's flowing through my mind, like, why would I put a lot of effort into it? Why would you do that? So, then step 2 is to identify all the things that you would do if you believed that the exact opposite were true. So instead of like, I don't even know why I bother going on dates, everybody in this town sucks, so that sort of thing, like, what would you do if you believed the exact opposite of those things? So like from being more excited to making eye contact to smiling to preparing to feeling more confident to eliciting more questions from the date to telling more quippy jokes and like letting yourself be seen and comfortable. All those things, like, list what you would see someone list what you would see from someone who believed that they make a killer great first impression and they are a great catch and that this could be the love of their life. Like, what would that person do? And then step 3 is act as if you are that person. Adopt all of the beliefs and behaviors of a person who truly believes that they rock first dates and who truly believes that dating will bring them the results they desire. Practice those behaviors. Imagine yourself embracing those behaviors and become like really familiar with what that would look like, so that you can use them without like thinking too much about it. And then each time a dysfunctional thought or an unhelpful thought comes to mind, smile at it and continue as planned. Continue to act as if you do have all the confidence in the world and you believe this date is going to go well, you know? So that's a bit on optimism for you for week 3 of Sagittarius season. I really hope that this feels useful to you. And I hope that you feel willing to embrace some optimism and play around a little bit. Just experiment with it for the rest of Sagittarius season. See what it's like to experiment with shifting into a more optimistic mindset. I don't think it's going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt you. It can only help you. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. If you like what I'm doing here, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, share it with people that you think would appreciate it. And let me know what you think down below. Tell me how you feel about optimism, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again so much, so much for being here. I really appreciate you. I will see you next time. Bye.